Okay, let's talk about part of the parameters that are used in Grasshopper. Everything under the tag params is actually a parameter that is kind of input data. For the first part, we can see a lot of parameters collections like point, circle, curve, plane, box, and other geometry. And these are collections of the data. For example, the point collection here is not actually a point, but a collection of point. You can also see the description here, it's a collection. So what it means the battery itself contains nothing. You have to create a geometry or choose one from the scene. Let's take a point as example. With right click on this battery, we can see set one point and a set of multiple points. Let's try set one point. There are actually several ways to set one point. You can choose how you want to set the pointer in Rhino. The first way is called coordinate. That's a way that you can directly draw a point, and here's our point. It's shown as a green cross in the scene. And the second way is called point. That's let we can create a point first, and that's when you can choose a point in the scene, and let's uh, choose it with Grasshopper, set one point, and choose the point. Now we have 2 point collection, but they actually contain different data type. To explain this, let me first introduce another battery that is panel. So panel is a checkboard for you to check what data you have, and if you connect it to the first point collection, you can see the result is a coordinate data. And if we connect it to the second collection, we can see the result is a reference point. That's two types of data. And I can show you the difference between these two data type. So let's create a box based on this 2 point. So the first box you can see is located on the coordinate 0, 0, 0, and the second box is built according to the location of the reference point. This means if you move the origin point, the box will also move according to the reference point. So you can see these boxes are different with each other. And it's important to always know that what data type you need and what data you can get from the battery when you work in Grasshopper. And this also works with other collections like line, curve, and geometry. So you just choose different kind of collections, and you can get different geometry data with these collections. The next input data I'll talk about is integer and number here. So uh, these two batteries are used for numbers input, and we can use our panel to check the result. If you right click on the battery and find a set integer, we can set the number to 6, and the outcome would also be 6. This also work with number. Right click to set number, uh, but here we can input 6.0, and the outcome would also be 6. The difference here is in the integer we can only type in integer number. For example, if here I type in 5.6, confirm the result, and the result would be 6. That's because Grasshopper would automatically transfer a decimal number to integer, and that's how it works. And for input of numbers, we have not only these two batteries, but we have a lot of other ways. For example, we can just double click on the canvas and input 6, and we have a input slider with the value of 6. And what's interesting about number slider is if we double click in the canvas and input 6.0, you can get a decimal number slider, and you can slide it. The number would also be decimal number instead of integer. And also double click on the number, you can change the value. Let's set it to 6. And another way to input number is just to use panel. If we have a panel and double click input 6, the value would also be 6. This value is not only a text, but an actual number that we can use. And how to prove it? I can show you with some tools in math. We have operators which is very easy to understand. They are just tools for you to calculate the data. You have like addition and subtraction. Let's try to use it. Addition is very easy to understand. If you have input 6 as input A and 6 as input B, the result would be 12. That's easy to understand. And what if we change the number to 5.6? If we choose subtraction and set input A as 6 and the input B as 5.6, the result is easy to predict. That would be 0.4, and here's our result, 0.4. And this also proves that the number from panel is not only a text but actual data value that can be processed. So there are 5 ways for you to input number, and sometimes you just need integer, so you can use integer. But for many other situation, a slider is really helpful because you can change the value and you can see the change of the model. Another batteries I would like to introduce in math would be degree to radians and radians to degree. To explain this battery, I will quickly build a new scene. First of all, let's create a box and set it as our geometry. Then we need to input a number as our rotation value and a rotation battery to rotate our geometry. So uh, now you can see the change already happened because the rotation battery have some default value. First, let's try a 90-degree rotation. We would think 90, uh, the number 90 as 90 degree, but in Grasshopper, 90 doesn't mean 90 degree. We have to transfer it into radians, so we just connect it to degree to radians and then connect to angle, and now that's 90-degree rotation, right? We can also see the result with a panel, and the result would be half of pi. And if we get this half of pi into our radians to degree, yeah, then the value would be 90 again, and this value is exactly the same as our slider input here. So this is what we should keep in mind, that Grasshopper didn't work with degree but with radians, and we should always remember to pay attention to different data type. After we understand input of parameters, I think it's important for us to know about data structure. Here is an example of how to understand this. So first, we have two lines in our scene, and I will extract some points from this line. So first, let's create a collection for this line and set one curve that would be the first line, and set another curve for the second line. And we can see now the first line and the second line. What we're gonna use is in curve, it's called a divide curve, and the input would be our curve and the other curve. So you can see now the battery also have some default settings, and we want to change the number to a smaller value, which would be 3. And now the line is divided into 3 sections, and what we want to do is let's check the data type of the output. So we can see the battery generates 4 points, and we have 3 sections and 4 points, and these points are described as coordinate information. So we have a group of 4 numbers, but there are other kind of data structure. If we just right click on the points and graph it, and what graph do is it creates 4 group of data, and in each group there are only one information, which is 1 point. So you can also see that the line between the two blocks is also changed, and what we want to pay attention to is that even the same data can have a different structure. And to understand this structure, I can show you with a battery called params viewer. So we can check the structure of this data with this params viewer. And you can see here for the first line, the data is one group and it contains 4 points. And if we graphed this data, the structure would be 4 branches, and on each branch we have only 1 point. Now, how did this structure affect our model? Well, I can show you in these settings. And let's first find a battery called line with 2 points. So this line battery is a way to create line between 2 points. You can see it needs a start point and the end point. So we will use point on the first line as start point and the point on the other line as end point. And here what we got is 4 lines connecting to each other. The result is just because the structure of this data are the same. And if we graph the points on the second line, and now you will see that the change happened. That's what happened to non-craft, and that's what we got from crafted. So what happened here is each point on this line trying to connect with each point on the other line. But because the structure of data have changed, now each point on this line will try to connect to each group and to every element in that group. So this is what happened in this data structure changing. And it's interesting that if we also graphed points on the first line, you can see the line becomes uh, like ungrafted again, each one to each one. Well, sometimes it's not easy to understand what graph and flatten do to the data, but you just need to know that even the same data could have different structures. Okay, now we have already know that there are different kind of data in Grasshopper. There are integer and number, and there are degree and radians, and also there are geometry collections data, and there are also functions batteries like rotate, 3D here. So when the battery lack of input information, it will show in orange. And if the data type is not matching, for example here, if we set our integer to a number and connect it to our rotation, the first data we need for a rotation is geometry. But if we give it a number, you will see the battery become red. It means the data didn't match. And uh, if you to cancel the connection is you press Ctrl and connect the port again, so then the line will be deleted. And the green battery is the battery you choose. So this are all what I want to talk about the battery appearance. I would like to say that in this tutorial, I will not walk through all the functions and the parameters in Grasshopper, but we focus on how to generate and control box with point, planes, and axis, and with value of our input sliders. And this part of introduction to parameters is just a basic introduction for you to understand what kind of parameters we have and where to find them. And in the next part, I would like to show you a practice which contains information about what we talked about before, about the parameters and some tools we explained.